Continuamos con la segunda parte de esta interesante conversación con el doctor Richard Bedlack, donde hablamos sobre investigación, esperanza y el futuro de la ELA.
And worldwide, do we have an idea of how many people are living with ALS?
Yeah, it's a little bit murkier to get this number worldwide because there are certain parts of the world where we really have virtually no information. But the best data that I have seen suggests that there's probably about 350,000 people living with ALS across the whole world. And there's probably about 55,000 new cases each year.
When someone is diagnosed, one of the first questions is about life expectancy. On average, how long do people live with ALS, and what factors influence that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I just want to say, I'll tell you about the averages, but I think you have to be careful how you talk about this and think about this when you get diagnosed. So 50% of people with ALS live about 3 years from their first symptoms. Another 20% live 5 years, 10% live 10 years, 5% live 20 years or more. So, you can look at those as either the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. Some people would look at that and say, wow, so you're telling me that most people live less than 5 years. That's true. But there are these outliers, again, that I would point to. And you just never know the day that you get diagnosed with this disease if you're going to be one of those. You could be Stephen Hawking and have this for 50 years. You could be the next ALS reversal. So I would say, I think that these numbers are okay to talk about as long as you mention to people that we don't know how each person is going to do.
We often hear that the United States and Spain are leading ALS research. What are they doing that makes the biggest difference?
I don't know if that's necessarily a statement that I can back up with facts. I think I am proud that there's a lot of great research going on here, but I would say there's a lot of great research going on in other places too. I mean, I've seen some great ALS research coming out of Canada. I've seen some great stuff coming out of Japan, stuff coming out of China, stuff coming out of other European countries like the United Kingdom. The Netherlands has some great research. So I don't necessarily think that, we're leading the way. I just think maybe we have a better publicity machine when we discover something, that there's a lot more noise made of it. But I think that it's really a worldwide effort to find, more of the causes of this disease and ways to stop it or reverse it. And I mean, that's one of the cool things that's kept me in ALS for this long, is that it's really very collaborative. Like other fields are much more competitive and people don't share things with each other, but that's not true in ALS. Like when I go to meetings, people from all over the world are there and we're sharing all of our ideas freely. So I think when we do finally end this disease, it's going to be because of that collaboration that we do it.
In recent years, have you seen any breakthroughs or discoveries that are changing how we understand ALS?
Yes, I have. So the first breakthrough happened 5 or 6 years ago when somebody said, instead of trying to develop one drug for all ALS, which hasn't worked in 100 years, why don't we target subsets that we understand? Let's start with the subset that we understand the best, which is the 1% of cases that are caused by mutations in the gene SOD1. And so they said to themselves, we think we understand how these broken genes are killing motor neurons. Let's build a drug called an antisense oligonucleotide to prevent that from happening. And there we developed our first blockbuster drug. Sure enough, more than 50% of people with that form of ALS who get on that drug stop progressing, and more than 20% get much stronger. There's even been reports of people who were wheelchair bound who can walk now because of that drug. And for most of the past 100 years, most scientists would look at ALS and say, the best we can do is slow it down a little bit. Clearly, that's not true. If we go after causes of the disease, we can have a dramatic effect. We can reverse weakness. And I see more gene therapies in the pipeline. The next one that I think is going to become approved is for another genetic form called FUS ALS. Again, that's rare. It's only about 1%, but still, this drug looks like it can stop and in some cases reverse the weakness for people with that form of ALS. And, you know, I hope that we develop therapies for all the genetic forms of ALS in the next 5 to 10 years. But again, 85% of people don't have a gene. And so one of the things I'm most excited about in the past 5 years is that we have these giant databases now where we have millions of pieces of information about hundreds of thousands of people with ALS. We have all their genetic information. We have all their environmental exposures. We have the other diseases that they have, all the medications and supplements that they took. And we finally have a tool to help us make sense of all that data. It's called artificial intelligence. So this is exactly what that tool is good for, making sense out of massive data sets. Like I believe in the next 5 years, we will understand why many more people get ALS. And thereby we will have targets where we can expect to see more home runs, including for people that don't have a primary gene as the cause of their disease. For people with what's so-called sporadic ALS, AI is going to tell us why more people have it, and we'll be able to then go after those causes and hit more home runs.
You've been researching ALS for many years. What are you focused on right now?
So I'm focused on these people that I call outliers, people that are doing much better than the average person. So it could be an extremely slow progressing patient who can still do marathons after 11 years. It could be someone like Stephen Hawking, who lives with it for 5 decades. It could be the 65 people that I know of who met criteria for ALS, progressed for a while, and then recovered all or most of their lost motor function. So together, I put all these people into a category called outliers. And I have found 3 possible explanations. And in each case, the explanation has led me to a clinical trial to try to make outliers happen more often. So one of the possible explanations is hope. I've come to believe that hope is more than just an emotion or a coping strategy. I actually think hope is a treatment. Across almost every disease where it's ever been studied, people with more hope are doing better medically. And certainly this is true of all the outliers. They're incredibly hopeful people. And so I've spent really 20 years trying to figure out how to be a better hope booster. I've got a whole approach that I call stitching strength. It starts with what I put on. The bright colors help me to be more positive. It starts by seeing people as more than just a diagnosis, by seeing the whole person and trying to figure out how to strengthen, some of those other parts of them until I can fix their motor neurons. It starts with the words that I use. I don't put expiration dates on people unless we're really quite near the end. I always talk about if things get worse, not when things get worse. So I know that approach is not going to work for everyone because it takes a lot of time. But I think I have a very simple intervention that can boost hope scores. And if I can prove that that works, and that by making people more hopeful, they do better medically, I might be able to get all the clinics in the world to start focusing on boosting hope. The second thing that I found is that the gut microbiome is different in outliers. So the combination of organisms that we have inside of us, viruses, bacteria, funguses, it's much different in people with very slow progression or reversal compared to people with typically fast progression. And at Duke, I've just started the world's first intelligent fecal transplant trial to see if I can change the gut microbiome of people with fast progressing ALS and slow them down. And we're building a probiotic, which will be much easier for people to take than fecal transplants, in hopes that we can target the gut microbiome and make everybody an outlier. And then finally, in the 65 people that recovered from ALS, I found something that's genetically different about them, an abnormality in a gene that controls the level of a protein called IGF-BP7. And since I made that discovery with my colleagues in 2024, we've now had multiple discoveries that support the idea that this protein is important in ALS. And now I've got an idea for how to knock this protein down using a nutritional supplement called beta-hydroxymethylbutyrate. And so I'll be putting that into a clinical trial later this year. So hope, gut microbiome, and IGF-BP7. I think those may be explanations for why some people are doing so much better than others. And I'm figuring out how to manipulate all those targets in hopes that make everybody an outlier.
One last question, and this one we like very much what you just said about the three things, and hope is one great thing.
And finally,
Well, thank you.
if you could speak directly to someone living with ALS in Latin America, what would you like to say to them?
It's a great question. So if you're someone in Latin America who's living with ALS, here's what I would say. First, there's so much that we can do for you now that we couldn't do when I started my career 25 years ago. We've got things to slow the disease down. We've got things to make your life better and longer. Second, don't ever let anybody say that this disease defines you. We don't know how you're going to do. There's no way anyone can look at you and put a expiration date on you. There are examples of people that have lived 50 years, amazing lives for 50 years. There's an example of people who've recovered from this disease. So take one day at a time, make your life as good as it can be. And don't forget that there's so much more to you than your motor neurons. You know, your family didn't fall in love with you because of your motor neurons. They fell in love with you because of your kindness, your compassion, your advocacy for others, and your sense of humor. And don't let all those things wither. You know, focus on those things, strengthen those things while people like me try to figure out how to save motor neurons.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time, for your work, and for your commitment to the ALS community. Y Carmen, gracias también por estar aquí y por todo lo que haces. Conversaciones como esta nos dan conocimiento, pero también nos dan esperanza. Y a todos los que nos están viendo, gracias por acompañarnos, por escuchar y por ser parte de esta comunidad.
Thank you for inviting me to talk to you today. And I love the slogan on your shirt, and I love the piece of art behind you. You'll have to email me and tell me about that piece of art because it's fascinating.
All
right.
He will talk about that too. And we're getting some homework after your interview here, and we're going to be in touch with you. I think we have pretty interesting things to talk about later after this.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for all the information. And thank you because lots of people are going to see this. And here in Panama, it's very important. Thanks to Rogelio, we have found lots of people with ALS. And we now have a community that we didn't have before. And it's just thanks to all the publicity and everything that he had done.
It's beautiful work, Rogelio. Keep up your good work.
Feel the thunder.